Dramatic aerial shots of Moscow, interspersed with Russian banks, gold vaults, and silver coins glinting under cold light. Since 2022, the world has witnessed a seismic shift in global geopolitics. Economic sanctions imposed on Russia following its controversial actions have crippled traditional trade routes, froze vast sums of Russian assets abroad, and isolated the nation from the Western financial system. Yet, while global headlines focused on stock market losses and currency fluctuations, an even more ambitious, secretive strategy was quietly unfolding behind closed doors in Moscow. Russia, a nation historically known for its resource wealth, has embarked on a program that could redefine economic warfare in the 21st century, the hoarding of silver on an unprecedented scale. Unlike gold, which has traditionally been seen as the ultimate financial hedge, silver combines monetary value with strategic technological applications, making it indispensable for both industrial and military purposes. The scale of this operation is staggering. Over the last 3 years, Russia has accumulated a stockpile valued at $310 billion, enough to potentially challenge the hegemony of the US dollar and shift global trade dynamics forever. But why silver? And how does this precious metal translate into geopolitical leverage? Silver is not just a commodity, it is a bridge between finance, technology, and warfare. In the modern age, where digital currencies, sanctions, and global trade wars dominate headlines, physical assets like silver offer a unique combination of liquidity, tangibility, and strategic security. For Russia, silver is both a shield and a sword, a tangible asset to back new financial instruments and a key material in advanced military technology. In this documentary, we peel back the layers of secrecy surrounding Russia's silver hoard, examining the Gokhran's Fission 1. 5 billion ruble acquisition program, the development of silver-zinc naval technology, and the creation of the BRICS unit currency, a gold-silver backed trade instrument designed to weaken the US dollar's global dominance. The implications are profound. What began as a quiet accumulation of metal in underground vaults could become a defining strategy in a new era of economic warfare, one that reshapes global finance, redefines alliances, and challenges the balance of power. Fade into archival footage of silver mining, Russian naval vessels, and trading floors p. The Gokhran buying program. Inside a high, security vault, rows of silver bars glimmer under dim lights. At the heart of Russia's silver accumulation lies the Gokhran, the state institution responsible for safeguarding and managing the nation's precious metals, gemstones, and other strategic resources. Historically, the Gokhran has served as Russia's most secure vault, guarding gold reserves and culturally significant treasures. But in 2022, its role evolved dramatically. Following sanctions and restrictions on international financial systems, the Gokhran launched a secretive 5 billion ruble silver buying program. Over several months, Russian authorities quietly purchased massive quantities of silver on both domestic and international markets, often roading acquisitions through complex financial structures designed to avoid detection. Experts estimate that this program has positioned Russia as one of the largest silver holders globally. By acquiring physical silver rather than relying solely on paper instruments, the Kremlin secured a hedge against currency volatility, economic sanctions, and potential financial warfare. Unlike gold, silver offers both financial leverage and technological utility, particularly in industries critical to national security. The scale of purchases is difficult to overstate. Russia's silver reserves, concentrated in the Gokhran and select naval storage facilities, now exceed what many nations hold in total. Analysts have suggested that if these reserves were monetized or utilized in backing a new financial instrument, Russia could directly challenge major global currencies, including the US dollar and the euro. But there is more than economics at play. Behind the vaults, silver is being integrated into highly classified technological programs, particularly within the military-industrial complex. One of the most intriguing developments is the so-called silver-zinc naval technology, a sophisticated application that combines the conductive properties of silver with zinc alloys to enhance naval power. CGI animation of Russian submarines and naval vessels powered by advanced alloys, with silver glowing in schematic overlays keen. The dual-purpose nature of silver, both a financial hedge and a strategic military resource, illustrates why Russia views it not merely as a commodity, but as a national security imperative. Every bar purchased under the Gokhran program strengthens Moscow's ability to project power, protect its financial sovereignty, and potentially redefine global trade norms through the emerging BRICS currency system. Graphical timeline showing 2022-2025 Gokhran silver purchases, interspersed with news clips and international reactions. The Gokhran's acquisitions were meticulous. Market analysts note that Russia carefully avoided triggering global price surges by spreading purchases across time, utilizing shell corporations, and leveraging trading networks in neutral or allied nations. The goal was clear: accumulate vast reserves without drawing international scrutiny. By mid-2023, Russia's silver stockpile was no longer just a reserve, it had become a strategic asset, underpinning everything from military advancements to the financial architecture of a new BRICS monetary framework. Since mid-2023, Russia's silver accumulation had quietly become one of the most closely guarded secrets in global finance. Analysts outside the Kremlin could only guess at the scale of the reserves, but satellite imagery, trading data, and occasional leaks suggested a massive, well-orchestrated operation. The Gokhran, long revered for protecting gold and gemstones, now played a dual role. It was both a financial fortress and a strategic operations hub. Inside the vaults, rows upon rows of silver bars and ingots were meticulously cataloged, each stamped and verified, creating a tangible wealth that was immune to sanctions, paper manipulation, or international banking restrictions. While the world debated cryptocurrency, sanctions, and IMF policies, Russia had returned to a very old, fashioned form of economic power: metal-backed security. Unlike the fragile promises of fiat currency, silver offered permanence. Every ingot purchased under the Gokhran program represented not just wealth, but leverage, a potential bargaining chip that could reshape trade agreements, undermine dollar dominance, and even fund covert technological programs. It was this intersection of finance and technology that made Russia's strategy uniquely formidable. At the heart of the military dimension was the so-called silver-zinc naval initiative, a top-secret program that had been quietly evolving since the late 2010s, but accelerated dramatically following international sanctions. Unlike conventional alloys used in naval construction, silver-zinc composites offered unmatched conductivity, durability, and corrosion resistance, making them ideal for the demanding conditions of submarine hulls, naval turbines, and critical electronic systems. Classified reports hinted that the alloy improved stealth capabilities, energy efficiency, and even weapon targeting precision. The Kremlin's naval engineers worked in underground facilities far from prying eyes, combining metallurgical science with strategic foresight. While most nations stockpile metals for industrial purposes, Russia was creating a dual-purpose reserve, one part financial insurance, one part military innovation. Every ingot of silver moving through the Gokhran had a potential secondary life in advanced naval systems, where it could enhance the performance of nuclear submarines, missile guidance systems, or radar components. This was not merely accumulation, it was the fusion of raw material with tactical advantage. Meanwhile, the global market remained unaware of the full magnitude of Russia's purchases. Analysts noticed anomalies, brief spikes in silver futures, or increased demand from obscure trading accounts, but the data was fragmented, often dismissed as noise. Moscow had perfected the art of discrete accumulation, spreading purchases over months, roading transactions through friendly countries, and leveraging shell corporations. By 2024, estimates suggested that Russia held several tens of thousands of tons of silver, enough to rival or exceed the reserves of many industrialized nations combined. The Gokhran's careful cataloging ensured that every ingot could be deployed, not just physically, but financially. This reserve became the backbone for the next stage of Russia's grand strategy, the creation of a BRICS-linked financial instrument, informally known as the BRICS unit, which would be backed by gold and silver reserves. Unlike traditional fiat currencies, this unit was intended to provide stability and credibility while bypassing the dollar-centric global financial system. While the BRICS unit remained in its early stages, its mere announcement created unease in global markets. Investors and policymakers began to recognize that Russia's silver hoard was not passive. It was an active tool, capable of supporting alternative currencies, collateralizing international trade and strengthening the strategic position of Moscow and its allied nations. The synergy between silver accumulation and military innovation also had profound implications for geopolitics. By embedding precious metals into advanced technology, Russia ensured that any potential sanctions or asset freezes could not easily neutralize its operational capabilities. Unlike paper, backed programs, or digital assets, silver is tangible, transportable, and universally recognized. Its dual role as both a financial hedge and a technological input created a unique resilience that few nations could replicate. Across Russia, secretive metallurgical labs produced prototype components, each integrating silver in ways that enhanced conductivity, energy efficiency, and structural integrity. In naval engineering, even small percentages of silver in composite alloys could improve signal transmission, reduce corrosion, and extend operational lifespan. Engineers documented performance gains in classified reports, demonstrating that this strategic metal was not merely symbolic, but instrumental in modern warfare. The international community remained largely unaware, preoccupied with macroeconomic headlines, oil prices, and trade tensions. Yet in Moscow, planners understood that the combination of a vast silver reserve and cutting-edge technology could serve as both a shield and a sword. Should sanctions intensify or financial isolation deepen, the stockpile could be liquidated, monetized, or leveraged in international negotiations. At the same time, it reinforced the nation's military readiness in ways that could remain hidden from satellites or intelligence networks. The secrecy extended even further. Not all of Russia's silver was stored in traditional vaults. Some had been incorporated into specialized alloys, naval components, and secure transportable formats, ensuring that a portion of the hoard was effectively immune to seizure or sabotage. The strategy was holistic finance, technology, and security integrated into a single operational doctrine. Observers who pieced together the evidence from Gokhran purchase records, metallurgical patents, and naval development reports began to recognize the scale and audacity of the program. Russia was not merely stockpiling a commodity, it was constructing a multi-layered strategic instrument designed to influence global economics, strengthen military capability, and prepare for a future where the dominance of the US dollar could be challenged. By 2025, the outlines of this strategy became clearer. Reports from independent analysts and leaks hinted at a silver reserve sufficient to underpin the BRICS unit, reinforce naval systems, and provide Moscow with unprecedented leverage in trade negotiations. The world was witnessing the quiet construction of a financial and military edifice, hidden in plain sight. This was no longer just about wealth. It was about power, sovereignty, and the ability to shape a post-dollar world. As the Gokhran stockpile grew, so too did the sophistication of the military applications. Every component, from submarine hull alloys to precision electronic circuits, integrated silver in a manner that amplified operational performance. The synergy between financial reserves and technological application created a resilience that was both subtle and formidable. Investors, policymakers, and global leaders would soon realize that Russia's $310 billion silver war chest was not a passive asset. It was the foundation of a multi-dimensional strategy that combined economic, military, and geopolitical influence in a way that had no precedent in modern history. As Russia's silver reserves swelled within the Gokhran, engineers and strategists moved swiftly to translate this stockpile into tangible technological superiority. The centerpiece of this transformation was the silver-zinc naval initiative, an advanced metallurgical program designed to enhance the nation's submarine and naval fleet capabilities. Unlike conventional alloys, the silver-zinc composites combined the unique properties of both metal silver, provided unmatched electrical conductivity, resistance to corrosion, and antimicrobial properties, while zinc contributed structural stability and reduced brittleness under extreme conditions. This combination allowed engineers to produce hulls, turbines, and electronic components that were lighter, stronger, and more resilient than traditional materials. Reports from classified naval programs suggested that even a minimal integration of silver in critical submarine components could extend operational lifespan by years, improve sonar and radar accuracy, and optimize energy consumption. For Russia's nuclear fleet, These advantages were not merely incremental, they were transformative. Each submarine could operate with greater efficiency, endure harsher conditions, and maintain stealth capabilities that rivaled or exceeded Western counterparts. The integration of silver into naval systems was a strategic masterstroke. By converting a portion of the Gokhran stockpile into military applications, Russia ensured that its economic reserves were simultaneously an active contributor to national defense. The line between financial planning and military engineering blurred, creating a dual-use paradigm where every ingot of silver had the potential to influence global geopolitics. While the exact scale of these programs remained classified, evidence suggested that a significant portion of the hoarded silver had already been transformed into advanced alloys, embedded within critical components across the Russian Navy. Analysts outside Russia could only infer the impact based on technical patents, metallurgical research papers, and sporadic military demonstrations. The synergy between financial stockpiling and technological application became even more apparent with the emergence of the BRICS unit, a gold and silver-backed currency instrument designed to circumvent the dollar-dominated global trade system. Conceptualized by BRICS nations as a stabilizing alternative for international trade, the unit leveraged tangible precious metal reserves as a guarantee of value. Russia's 310 billion silver reserve became the backbone of this nascent currency, offering credibility and liquidity that fiat-backed alternatives could not match. Unlike traditional currency systems, where value relies on government policy, economic performance, or investor sentiment, the BRICS unit derived its strength from physical assets with intrinsic value. Silver hoarded in Gokhran vaults, some of it already integrated into naval applications, could be monetized or leveraged in international trade settlements. This meant that the BRICS unit was not merely a theoretical alternative. It was a currency underpinned by tangible, transferable wealth. International traders, previously reliant on the dollar for commodities like oil, gas, and metals, faced a new dynamic, a currency backed by physical silver that could be deployed strategically, enhancing the negotiating power of BRICS nations. Moscow's planners understood that currency backed by hard assets is inherently more resistant to market manipulation, sanctions, and speculative attacks. The BRICS unit was designed to be both stable and resilient, offering participants a credible alternative to the volatile fluctuations of fiat systems. The implications for the United States and its dollar hegemony were significant. By securing a reliable and widely accepted currency alternative, BRICS nations could conduct trade with less exposure to dollar risk, reducing the global demand for U.S. currency reserves. This, in turn, had the potential to weaken the dollar's global dominance over time, reshaping trade flows, commodity pricing, and geopolitical influence. For Russia, the combination of a massive silver stockpile, advanced naval technology, and participation in the BRICS financial framework created a multi-layered strategic advantage. The nation could simultaneously project military power, secure economic stability, and exert influence over international trade norms. While the global media focused on fluctuating stock markets, energy crises, and conventional sanctions, Moscow quietly positioned itself at the nexus of metal-backed finance and technological innovation. This strategy blurred the line between economic policy and military planning. Every silver ingot in a Gokhran vault was not just a hedge against financial instability. It was a potential lever in negotiations, a resource for high-tech military components, and a pillar of a new currency designed to challenge entrenched global powers. Observers outside Russia gradually began to connect the dots. Reports of unusual silver purchases, coupled with rising BRICS coordination, suggested a deliberate orchestration of financial and strategic assets. Analysts noted that countries with historical reliance on the U.S. dollar were increasingly exploring BRICS-linked transactions, a subtle but meaningful shift in international finance. By 2025, the contours of a new geopolitical landscape were emerging. Russia's silver strategy had transformed from secretive accumulation into an integrated system of economic, military, and diplomatic power. The world had entered an era where tangible metals could underpin not only technological superiority, but also the very currencies used to conduct international trade. Unlike traditional strategies reliant on conventional reserves or paper, backed financial instruments, Russia's approach was both visible and covert, tangible yet strategically veiled. As the Gokhran's vaults continued to fill, the synergy between finance, technology, and diplomacy became increasingly apparent. The silver-zinc program ensured that reserves could be leveraged in naval power projection, while the BRICS unit provided a platform for challenging existing global financial norms. Each component reinforced the others, creating a feedback loop of influence and strategic advantage. The potential impact was profound: a world where currency stability, military strength, and economic resilience were intertwined through the careful deployment of precious metals. For policymakers, investors, and strategists, the lesson was clear: Russia had transformed silver from a simple commodity into a strategic tool of power, capable of shaping markets, militaries, and alliances simultaneously. The quiet accumulation of metal had evolved into a bold declaration of economic independence and military ingenuity, while much remained hidden behind the iron doors of Gokhran vaults and the secrecy of military labs. The foundations of a new global order were already being laid, brick by brick, ingot by ingot, and alloy by alloy. As Russia's Gokhran continued to amass silver and integrate it into advanced naval technologies, attention turned to the financial dimension. The creation of the BRICS unit, a new currency designed to operate independently of the US dollar. Conceived as a gold and silver-backed instrument, the BRICS unit was not merely a theoretical alternative. It was a tangible asset, backed medium capable of facilitating trade, stabilizing economies, and challenging the dollar's long-standing dominance. Each unit of this currency represented a portion of physical metal, securely stored and accounted for in Gokhran vaults. By tying value directly to silver and gold, Russia and its BRICS partners aimed to create a system resistant to speculative attacks, inflationary pressures, and the political leverage that accompanies the dollar's global hegemony. Unlike fiat currencies, whose worth depends on trust in governments and central banks, the BRICS unit had intrinsic value. Traders could rely on the fact that every transaction was backed by a metal with universal recognition and liquidity. This fundamentally altered the dynamics of international commerce. For decades, global trade had revolved around the US dollar, giving Washington unparalleled influence over pricing, sanctions, and financial flows. The introduction of the BRICS unit disrupted this arrangement. Nations that adopted the unit could conduct cross-border transactions without exposing themselves to U.S. the imposed sanctions or the volatility of fiat currencies. Russia's silver hoard, integrated into this system, became both a symbol and a tool of sovereignty. It was more than wealth; it was influence, embedded directly into the mechanisms of global trade. The impact on global markets was already noticeable. Commodities traditionally priced in dollars began to see alternative pricing schemes emerge in BRICS markets, while central banks in allied nations explored holding silver-backed assets as a reserve strategy. Even subtle shifts in trade agreements hinted at a slow but deliberate pivot toward a multi-currency world order. Investors and economists began to recognize the implications. The BRICS unit was not just a currency, it was a geopolitical lever. By anchoring financial power in tangible assets and distributing it across multiple nations, the BRICS coalition created resilience against sanctions, political pressure, and global economic shocks. Simultaneously, Russia's integration of silver into military technology ensured that economic influence was reinforced by strategic strength. Unlike traditional financial maneuvers, this approach combined material wealth, technological superiority, and diplomatic leverage in a single, coherent strategy. The ripple effects extended across commodity markets. Silver, once considered a niche investment relative to gold, became a strategic resource with multiple layers of demand. Industrial use, technological application, and financial backing all converged to create scarcity and market sensitivity. Analysts observed price anomalies, speculative interest, and a growing awareness of the strategic importance of silver in global finance. For the United States, these developments posed a challenge unlike any seen in recent decades. The dollar's central role in global trade had been reinforced through decades of reliance, reserve holdings, and network effects. The rise of a viable, asset-backed alternative threatened to erode that dominance incrementally but persistently. While the BRICS unit could not replace the dollar overnight, the combination of tangible backing, international coordination, and strategic integration with military assets provided a foundation for long-term disruption. For emerging economies and trading partners, the BRICS unit offered an attractive alternative. Countries wary of U.S. sanctions or seeking greater autonomy in trade could leverage a currency tied to real assets rather than abstract promises. This shifted negotiation dynamics, creating new alliances and redefining the economic center of gravity in several regions. Beyond currency and trade, Russia's silver strategy demonstrated the power of combining finance with technology. Military analysts noted that nations with significant tangible reserves, integrated into strategic applications, could operate with enhanced independence. By linking silver hoarding to naval innovations, Russia ensured that its economic leverage translated directly into operational capability. In practical terms, this meant that any attempt to isolate Russia economically could be mitigated by the utility of its reserves. Even in scenarios of severe sanctions, Moscow could deploy silver-backed instruments, maintain technological superiority, and influence global trade networks without complete dependence on foreign financial systems. By 2025, the outlines of this strategy had become visible to careful observers. While the full extent of the reserves and their applications remained classified, the combination of Gokhran purchases, naval technology, and the BRICS unit formed a coherent, multi-dimensional plan. Russia was no longer reacting to sanctions. It was proactively constructing a system designed to endure and thrive under conditions that might cripple other economies. Analysts began using terms like financial sovereignty through precious metals to describe the strategy, noting that Russia's approach represented a fusion of centuries-old asset accumulation practices with cutting-edge technological deployment. The broader implications for the global economy were staggering. Commodity markets were likely to experience greater volatility as physical silver gained strategic importance. National policies in energy, trade, and reserve management had to account for the rising influence of metal-backed currencies. Investors faced new risks and opportunities, requiring an understanding of how physical assets, technological integration, and geopolitical maneuvering intersected in unprecedented ways. As this new paradigm unfolded, it became clear that Russia's 310 billion silver war chest was more than a financial reserve. It was a strategic instrument capable of influencing global trade, currency stability, and military balance. The careful orchestration of accumulation, technology, and currency development represented a level of strategic foresight rarely seen in modern history. Every ingot of silver held in the Gokhran, every component in a silver-zinc alloy, and every unit of BRICS-backed currency contributed to a vision of long-term influence and resilience. In essence, Russia had transformed a simple commodity into a tool of economic warfare and strategic autonomy, positioning itself to challenge long-standing global hierarchies. Nations and investors now faced a choice: continue relying on traditional financial systems dominated by the dollar, or recognize the emerging role of precious metals, innovative technology, and BRICS-backed instruments in shaping the next era of global economics. The quiet accumulation of silver, once an overlooked tactic, had evolved into a blueprint for power, resilience, and influence. Its impact would unfold over the coming decades, shaping markets, alliances, and the very architecture of international finance in ways few could have anticipated. Russia's strategic accumulation of silver was not simply an exercise in wealth preservation. It was a calculated endeavor to construct a multi-layered war chest capable of influencing global outcomes on multiple fronts. While ordinary investors viewed precious metals as a hedge against inflation or currency volatility, Moscow approached silver as a multi-dimensional tool of power, simultaneously shaping economic policy, military readiness, and diplomatic leverage. Within the high security confines of the Gokhran, officials meticulously cataloged every ingot, every alloy, and every batch earmarked for technological application. The vaults, vast and labyrinthine, contained not just silver, but also gold and other strategic resources, all carefully tracked and stored to maximize both financial and operational utility. By embedding a significant portion of its hoard into advanced military systems, Russia assured that its strategic reserves were not passive. They could influence outcomes even in scenarios of extreme international isolation. Naval engineers, metallurgists, and financial planners worked in concert, bridging the gap between metal hoarding and military innovation. Submarines, surface vessels, and critical electronic components incorporated silver in ways that increased efficiency, enhanced durability, and extended operational range. Analysts outside Russia began to notice subtle shifts, enhanced naval exercises, incremental improvements in missile and submarine performance, and a slow but deliberate expansion of the Gokhran's holdings. These developments pointed to a deliberate strategy to convert financial reserves into real-world strategic leverage. Yet with such a vast accumulation came inherent risks and speculative considerations. The silver market, though large, is finite. Large-scale hoarding has the potential to influence global prices, creating volatility for both investors and nations reliant on silver for industrial and technological purposes. Russia's approach, however, demonstrated sophistication. Purchases were carefully, often routed through complex trading networks to avoid sudden market disruptions. From an economic perspective, the global implications were profound. The combination of a BRICS-backed currency, a massive silver reserve, and technological integration created a scenario where Moscow could exert influence without relying on traditional financial channels. Central banks and policymakers faced a new reality: the value of tangible assets and their strategic deployment could no longer be overlooked. Speculative scenarios began to emerge. If Russia were to liquidate portions of its silver reserve in international markets, either to fund projects or strengthen the BRICS unit, prices could spike dramatically, creating ripple effects across commodities, ETFs, and industrial supply chains. Conversely, strategic retention of silver strengthened Moscow's negotiating position, offering leverage in trade agreements, sanctions negotiations, and diplomatic engagements. Investors, too, faced new opportunities. Precious metals that had long been considered secondary to gold suddenly became central to portfolio strategies, not merely for hedging, but as potential instruments of geopolitical foresight. Understanding Russia's accumulation patterns, potential technological applications, and involvement in BRICS frameworks became critical for predicting market behavior. Beyond pure economics, Russia's war chest also served as a deterrent and insurance mechanism. Nations seeking to isolate or coerce Moscow faced the reality that tangible, dual-use assets underpinned both financial stability and military capability. In effect, Russia's silver hoard functioned as a shield, a way to insulate national power from external pressures, while simultaneously providing offensive options in currency and trade strategy. Yet there were uncertainties. The success of the BRICS unit depended not only on Russia's reserves, but also on the coordination and commitment of member nations. Geopolitical tensions, trade disputes, or internal economic challenges could influence adoption and stability. Similarly, technological applications, while promising, carried risks inherent to advanced materials, cost overruns, engineering challenges, and potential exposure to international monitoring or espionage. The global market watched closely. Analysts, investors, and policymakers began considering multiple scenarios, each tied to the interplay of silver accumulation, technological deployment, and currency influence. One scenario envisioned a slow but steady erosion of dollar dominance as BRICS nations increasingly conducted trade in the unit, backed by tangible assets. Another speculated on sudden market disruptions triggered by strategic liquidation or reallocation of silver reserves. In all cases, the underlying principle was cleared physical assets, when combined with strategic foresight, could shape global outcomes far more effectively than paper promises. This understanding marked a shift in both policy and investment thinking. Governments could no longer assume that traditional financial tools, interest rate adjustments, or sanctions alone would determine geopolitical influence. Tangible reserves, technological integration, and asset-backed currencies were emerging as critical instruments of modern power. For Russia, the strategy was a masterclass in integration. Economic planning, military innovation, and diplomatic foresight were interconnected, creating resilience, leverage, and opportunity simultaneously. By securing silver, developing advanced alloys, and participating in BRICS financial frameworks, Moscow had crafted a self-reinforcing system Each component amplified the others, producing an effect far greater than the sum of its parts. As this strategic narrative unfolded, the global community began to recognize the implications. Commodity markets were increasingly influenced by asset-backed currencies. Naval and defense analysts monitored the integration of precious metals into advanced military systems. Investors reconsidered allocation strategies, weighing not only market trends but also geopolitical resilience. The quiet accumulation of silver, once dismissed as routine, had become the cornerstone of a 21st century war chest, simultaneously financial, technological, and strategic. In this new paradigm, the concept of power extended beyond armies, diplomacy, or conventional reserves. It encompassed the ability to leverage tangible assets in multiple domains, creating influence, resilience, and optionality in ways previously unseen. Russia's $310 billion silver war chest was no longer a hidden secret. It was an emerging blueprint for modern strategy, demonstrating how a nation could secure economic independence, technological superiority, and geopolitical leverage simultaneously. The combination of careful accumulation, advanced technology, and participation in alternative currency frameworks offered lessons for nations, investors, and policymakers alike in the modern era. Power is measured not only in currency or arms, but in the strategic deployment of tangible, versatile assets. The story of Russia's $310 billion silver war chest is, at its core, a tale of foresight, strategy, and the quiet orchestration of power. In 2022, as sanctions struck and the world anticipated economic disruption, Moscow embarked on a path few could see, but all would eventually feel. The accumulation of silver, the meticulous cataloging within the Gokhran, and the integration of advanced silver-zinc alloys into the naval fleet were all pieces of a larger puzzle. A puzzle designed not merely for wealth preservation, but for geopolitical influence and economic sovereignty. From the shadowed vaults of the Gokhran to underground laboratories where naval engineers experimented with new alloys, each action reinforced the other. Physical silver, once considered a commodity with limited strategic value, became the backbone of a multi-dimensional strategy. Every ingot represented leverage in trade, leverage in military technology, and leverage in international finance. The silver-zinc initiative demonstrated that innovation need not rely solely on abstract intelligence or digital advancements. Tangible metals could enhance stealth capabilities, energy efficiency, and precision in nuclear submarines. At the same time, the BRICS unit currency illustrated the power of integrating a financial strategy with hard assets. By backing a new trade instrument with silver and gold, Russia and its allies created a framework resilient to sanctions, speculative attacks, and the structural dominance of the US dollar. The world's economic order, long predicated on fiat currencies and centralized financial influence, faced a subtle but profound challenge. As BRICS nations explored the use of the unit for cross-border trade, investor and policymaker attention shifted to tangible reserves, asset-backed currencies, and the strategic use of commodities as tools of statecraft. The global impact was complex. Markets adjusted to the growing scarcity of silver, investors recalibrated risk strategies, and nations reconsidered the balance of power. Russia's war chest, though accumulated quietly, was no longer invisible. It had become a force multiplier, simultaneously reinforcing military capability, financial independence, and diplomatic leverage. Yet, with opportunity came risk. The silver market, though massive, is finite, and the concentration of reserves created potential for volatility, speculation, and strategic counter moves by rival powers. The BRICS unit, while promising, relied on coordination among multiple nations, stability of reserves, and careful deployment in trade agreements. Military applications carried inherent uncertainties as well, from engineering challenges to the potential for intelligence leaks. Despite these risks, Russia's strategy illustrated a fundamental principle of modern power: the integration of finance, technology, and strategy can create resilience and influence in ways that transcend traditional measures of strength. In a world where digital currencies, sanctions, and geopolitical tensions dominate headlines, the quiet accumulation of silver serves as a reminder of the enduring importance of tangible assets. It also underscores the sophistication of a nation capable of leveraging such assets across multiple domains simultaneously. By 2026, The outlines of a new economic and geopolitical reality were emerging.